This is a relatively unconventional camp meeting, I guess you said. I don't have a PowerPoint for you. I'm not going to give you the history rundown of a certain individual or a certain company or a certain a battle. But what I am going to try to do is try to open your eyes to some history that that has taken place out to our east. So Chattanooga, Tennessee. Chattanooga, Tennessee was certainly a pivotal point in the Civil War. The gateway to the South, if you will. There's a lot going on there. A lot of transportation, a lot of logistics would flow through that area, and certainly the terrain would have inhibited or assisted certain armies in either getting through or defending. At least that's what we would have hoped. So with Chattanooga, this has interested me my entire life. When I was younger, as a child, Robert's age, if you will, my father would take me to battlefields all across the Southeast. I grew up in Chattanooga, born and raised there, and every single weekend we were going up to Lookout Mountain, if you're familiar with that place, going down to Chickamauga, down to the battlefield, and many other smaller areas around the city, because essentially during the Civil War, the entire city, from the north to the south, to the east to the west, all around there was something happening, something taking place, whether it was a bridge being burned, or whether it was a bridge being reconstructed, or whether it was a battery being set up, or whether it was certain fields of fire that cannons would have from either strategic points on the river or even from the mountain. And unfortunately, disastrous fields of fire from the mountain with some of the cannons there facing towards the north were simply cannons that couldn't traverse down low enough to engage the Union troops as they were making their way up. So there's a lot of history that took place there. And I'm certainly interested in the Civil War. I've got a lot of Civil War history. I thoroughly enjoy it, sucking it in and learning as much as I possibly can, but also even up until the Reconstruction period. Just being born and raised there and going around to all these places, even seeing some of the buildings that were built in the city. I love architecture. I love seeing how just beautiful buildings were constructed. It's always been of interest to me. And so what I typically do, I go around to some of the shows, such as the Franklin Civil War Show, the Chickamauga Civil War Show down in Dalton, or the Chattanooga Civil War Show, which is typically held at this area called Camp Jordan Arena. And I think it's in its 6th or 7th year now. It's being hosted by American Digger Magazine, if you're familiar with that. So they do a really good job. But it's certainly not on the scale of the Mike Kent shows, such as the Franklin Show, but nonetheless, it's a good show. It's enjoyable, so I highly recommend. There's one coming up in July. I think it's towards the end of July up in Chattanooga. It's about a 2.5 hour drive, I guess, from here, give or take. But it should be fun. I'm definitely going to go up there. I bring all this stuff out, but unfortunately, when I go to these shows, it costs $100 a table to display, and I don't sell anything. So nothing here's for sale. I've collected these things over a few decades, and I enjoy bringing them out and talking to people at these shows about them. And yeah, I do run some social media sites I haven't really been that active on. As Lee mentioned, life catches up with you, work catches up with you. So it just really depends on how much time I have. But I guess one of my main goals is to target the younger generations and to show them this stuff, to get them interested in one way, shape, or another. Because guys, as you know, if you can't get the younger generations engaged, involved, then everything that you have right now goes out the window. It goes away. So I've got a teenage son, and he comes to these shows with me. I talk to him about these places. I show him these physical places now. It's like a now and then type thing. I'm sure some of you have seen the history books. But you've got individuals that are in their 20s and 30s that come to these shows, even teenagers. And if you can say, if I can walk up to somebody that's in their mid-20s and say, hey, have you ever had a moon pie? Robert, have you ever had a moon pie? You know what a moon pie is, right? Yeah. So they've got the factory in downtown Chattanooga. That's where they make them. Well, this picture right here, this picture was taken probably about 1890, 1905, something like that. And no, I'll take that back. I'm going to say about 1915. Anyway, it was taken a long time ago, all right, well over 100 years ago. But there's a barn right here. It's a barn. At this point in time, they were producing some form of fittings, I believe it was. I looked it up at some point. But nonetheless, you look at really close at this picture, and what I've done, I've taken this and I've put it on the computer. I've digitized it and made it zoomed in so where you can see it crystal clear, really big on a computer screen, or even on a cell phone. So when I'm talking to a 25-year-old, I say, hey, let me see your cell phone. I go to my website and I show them this. I blow it up and I say, hey, do you see this castle design on the top of the structure? I said, if you go down to the moon pie factory today and you stand in the parking lot, you look up, you're going to see that same architecture. This building is encapsulated in the current factory. And that's how I make a connection with the younger generation. You know, you've had a moon pie. I'm like, hey, this is the moon. This is where they make them, right here. It's still there. It's still there. It still exists. And they see all this beautiful farmland. There's not, you know, one or two houses on here. You got the tannery flats over here on the side. But I mean, it's night and day now. It's night and day now. There's buildings everywhere. There's condos everywhere. You know, roads. Yes, sir.
Chuck wanted to know how many flavors do they make now?
Shoot, I don't know. they got probably cherry and blackberry and vanilla, and I don't know. I know they've got at least 3.
I know we got banana.
You got blueberry.
Blueberry, banana.
Right, got blueberry. I've had one.
They're cranking them out.
Well, let's just say all of the above.
All of the above. That's just one example. Another example. You know, I do have some ladies that come through from time to time, and you know, some ladies are very familiar with the Daughters of the American Revolution. You guys have heard of them, right? Pretty predominant organization. Good people.
Yeah, they are.
They do good stuff. And I've got this phenomenal, striking, very large image that I can come out and show. I say, look at these. These ladies are dressed incredibly professional. I mean, they're absolutely gorgeous. They've got their what's it called? Anyway, Nancy Ward chapter. You know, their banner right there, if you will. And I mean, this is incredible. But then you flip it over, and it's literally got every single lady's first and last name and who they are. And you can track this because, you know, 9 times out of 10, these are most likely their married names and where they're sitting in the photo. And so I've taken this, again, I've digitized this, you know, super high resolution. I've sent it over to the Daughters of the American Revolution chapter, the Nancy Ward chapter. They now have a digitized copy of this that hopefully they printed and hung up on the wall. I had a gentleman ask me about a flood. Chattanooga was prone to floods. It still is, I guess, but it was certainly prone to floods before the Tennessee Valley Authority came in and started putting up dams all across the river. So I've got some great photographs that you know, I'm able to demonstrate and show people, hey, this was the flood of 1867 that took out the Federal Bridge, and I can try to connect that. So I've got some photos over here, and here in just a few minutes, you know, I would certainly like to open it up because if I go grab one of these little small pictures like this, you're not going to be able to see it. But so I've got a picture of the Federal Bridge that was taken up. I think it was about 1864. So you can see some uniformed soldiers on the bridge. Well, 3 years later, probably one of the most catastrophic floods that ever came through the Chattanooga region, came through, swept down, took the bridge out at its pylons. I mean, just washed the whole thing away. That was 1867. There was not another way to cross that river by wagon, if you will, until 1890 when they built the Walnut Street Bridge. So, I mean, you're looking at I'm trying to do math in public here, 23 years. 23 years where you're going to have to go get on a ferry, and you're literally going to have to take a ferry across to get to the other side of the river. I mean, it just completely cut off all means of communication and logistics going across that river. Funny story, I've also got a picture that shows the ferry. You can see a horse loaded on it, you can see a wagon on it, and you can see the points where it would pull itself up to a little island and then up back across to the other side. So that's something that I found interesting. I've got a really good friend that runs ChattanoogaHistory.com. We're friends. His website is absolutely incredible. If you do have the means to get on the interwebs, I highly recommend that you go to that. It's got a large amount of these photos that he has digitized for me to include a ton of his own, and he does research. I mean, he does research like none other. If you want to learn about Chattanooga and its history, that is an excellent resource. Speaking about that, let's see. I'm trying to mentally move on to some other topics here. All right, so a lot of the photographs that I have, I've got some of Lookout Mountain. Lookout Mountain, a lot of people know about Lookout Mountain. During the Civil War, this was one of the, I mean, outside of Devil's, was it Devil's Den, right, Gettysburg? You know, that's a very prominent place, Lookout Mountain, a very prominent place. So we certainly had battles that we know of, you know, the Fredericksburg, the Spotsylvania, you know, the courthouse, Gettysburg. I mean, there's all sorts of battles that took place, but a physical landmass, a geographical structure, if you will, Lookout Mountain. It's True Mountain, a little over 2,000, and there's a lot of fighting that took place there. And not just there, but then you have Chickamauga. I mean, one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War took place just, I mean, a hop, skip, and a jump. It's right down the road. And so the Chickamauga National Park, Civil War Park, was the first Civil War National Park that was dedicated. It's very large. It encompasses parts of Lookout Mountain and certainly Chickamauga. Chickamauga, I have never seen never touched. I've seen two photographs that were taken kind of outside the battlefield prior to when the Federal Army was marching in. Those are online in the National Archives. Aside from that, I've never seen another one. Never seen another one. I've got quite a few letters that were written from Chickamauga. I've actually got a whole binder here of a captain. I think he's with what is it? It's a Union captain, but he was with the one of the Ohio, 121st Ohio. So this right here is probably about 50 or so documents from his personal collection. I picked these up in 2012. His family was just kind of going through, unfortunately, as it happens, going through, found some stuff in a wooden box and just sent it up for auction. So I saw it and I tracked it, and eventually came up with it because everything here is Chickamauga. It details his accounts as a captain of the 121st, within the 121st Company A, losing a substantial amount of men. So losing men on the battlefield, it talks about in great depth and detail how those men lost their lives, unfortunately, and it talks about the weapons that were left behind. You go through and there's another reference somewhere in here about he sent a foraging party out going towards Ringgold, Georgia, and the Confederate forces stopped this party and disarmed them of everything they had, took all their equipment, all their weapons, and sent them on their way. But he talks about how they lost all of this equipment to the Confederate Army that was keeping the road, we'll say, safe going down towards Ringgold. So incredible archive here talking about Chickamauga. This is just one piece. It's really interesting to read through and to kind of get a sense of what was taking place at that point in the battle. Also, the Civil War within Chattanooga. All of these letters up here, I've got these. This is certainly the lion's share. I probably have another 15% stuck in the house, but these letters are very interesting because they are Union and Confederate soldiers that were in Chattanooga. In Chattanooga at whatever date is listed on these letters, and they are writing. They're writing to their family. They're writing to their wives, to their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, fathers, talking about what's happening. What's happening in 1862? What's happening in 1863, 64? And it talks about very horrific engagements on Missionary Ridge, and it certainly details the Lookout Mountain, the siege of Lookout Mountain. We talk about, Missionary Ridge. I've got some great content here on one of these. I've even got one where they talk about, I think it's 4th of July or something, somewhere in that time period. But it states that the men are getting restless. They are filling their canteens full of powder and lighting them on fire, and essentially just blowing them up, throw them off the mountain, just to things to go boom. Probably getting drunk too. Just speculation. Talk about the cracker lines. Talk about resupply routes, all sorts of skirmishes that take place. But it's just very interesting. It's very interesting and humbling to read these men's thoughts, their wishes to their family, trying to figure out what's going on back home. Today we pick up a phone and find out it's not the case here. If any of you served in Vietnam, Korea era, Korea would be a hard sell, but you probably recognize that sitting down and putting pen to paper means something. And you put your emotions out there. You put your everything you got onto a piece of paper with a pen. You seal it up and you send it and you cross your fingers. So that's what these are. That's what these represent to me. I'm just the keeper of these letters. They're going to go to somebody else one day, but if I can even change one person's thought, one person's opinion on that period in history where these brave men, gave their lives in many cases on both sides, that's a win for me. You guys make it up here in just a little bit. This binder right here, this is something that I picked up over the course of about a year, about 5 years ago. And so in this binder right here, there's, a baker's dozen or so letters that really interested me. So this was Sergeant Anderson writing to his father, Colonel Anderson, from Chattanooga, Tennessee. So he enlisted in the Confederate Army in 1860, mid 1862, I believe it was, and went down to Pollard, Alabama to do training. There's a big training camp down there for Confederate forces. Went down there and found himself in Huntsville. So he found himself in Huntsville for a decent portion of the war and back and forth. I think he was in Chattanooga for a little bit. Some of these I've transcribed, some of them I have not. But this really, I got excited about this because I obviously do Chattanooga stuff, as you can see. But I now live north of Huntsville. So I spent almost 21 years in the Marine Corps, retired a few years ago, moved down to Huntsville, and that's where I'm raising my family now, Hazel Green. So this was really cool looking at this. I mean, you've got everything from his one of his sisters sends like a lock of hair, and I had a photograph that came along with it. The gentleman in the middle is John and his two sisters on both sides. I couldn't tell you who's who as far as the sisters go, but it's an incredible large format tintype. Yeah, it's really cool. So, feel free to come up here and take a look at that here in just a little bit. But as I mentioned, a lot of good letters here. Union, Confederate. I've got a Confederate officer's letter right here, Confederate captain. This was the very first letter I ever purchased. I found this at auction, I don't know, it was a long time ago, but I actually got it from my dad for a Father's Day present. I thought he would enjoy it, because as I mentioned, I grew up, him taking me to all these places, throwing the bicycle in the back of the truck and going out to Chickamauga and kicking me out, and I'd just ride behind the truck as he was driving through. And so yeah, I told him I'm going to hold on to it for safekeeping. There is something that you will see on some of these tables that is a trend, and it is a picture of a really big rock. It looks like a table. It is iconic to Chattanooga, and I say iconic from my perspective because I grew up seeing it, touching it. Nowadays, it's been barred off. So Umbrella Rock. Umbrella Rock is, in my humble opinion, probably one of the most well-known photographs of Chattanooga. At least it would have been years ago. During the Civil War, a lot of forces came through Chattanooga, and then after the fact, you had a lot of reunions in Chattanooga. So Union and Confederate reunions, and they would, of course, go to Lookout Mountain because that's what you did. You went to the mountain and you went to this rock right here, and you got your picture taken on it. And so a lot of these pictures are veterans from Union and Confederate. And some of these, something that really gets me excited is going through and finding these and seeing what ribbon they have on their chest. And if I can zoom in close enough, if I can get that shape just right, I can tell you based off that and what they're wearing. And some of them have a date on them back. If I see 1913, boom, that's Confederate veteran. Some of the other years, other. But it's incredible to be able to get these, to see these, and then you get an older gentleman that clearly was there in mid 1860s. And then he's got his kids with him, maybe some grandkids with him. So he's taking his whole family and he wants to go show them. There was we fought a war, between the states, and that's something that on U.S. soil, it's only happened once, and I'd like for it not to happen again. But if you've been in the military, you've traveled to all these different countries, but in the United States, for it to be where you live and you fought in these places, it's got to mean a lot more. Because personally, I would never want to go back to Iraq or Afghanistan. I don't care. Don't want to do it. But you clearly had people that wanted to come back and wanted to visit some of these places. I mean, you see it all the time from the Gettysburg reunions. You see it certainly at these Chattanooga reunions, and there's a lot more, guys. So that's always something that I enjoy looking for, is to see these veterans up there with their families sitting up on this rock. And I've got some pictures. You got 20-something people. I don't know. They're crazy to get up on that rock. But nowadays it's behind some very large steel gates, and they used to, decade ago, maybe even less. There's a organization called the National Parks Partners, and it's an organization that takes donations, if you will, and they put it all towards the battlefield. So they're going out and they're trying to buy land that is privately owned and return it to the battlefield. If it's got a strip mall on it, they're doing the same thing up in Franklin, Tennessee. But they try to get this land and try to secure this land so it doesn't get condos built on it. And they bring it back to the state it was in the 1860s, which is a good thing, I think. But anyway, they would host an annual fundraiser. You could actually go down and, it was a closed event, take pictures on the rock. So I had the opportunity, 2015 or 16, I can't remember, to go do that. And so I've got those pictures with my dad, which is great and special to me. Yeah, let's see. I'll run my mouth for a few more minutes, and then I would really welcome you guys to come up here and take a look. Over on this table, there are a lot of smaller photos called CDVs. That's a French word, but they're about the size of a baseball card, and every single one of these are wartime photographs, and all of these are taken in Chattanooga, which I cater towards. And if you flip them over, probably 8 out of 10 have a benchmark on the back, a stamp that says it's taken by Robert Lynn. Robert Lynn was a photographer that traveled with the Union Army. I can't remember what state or whatever, but anyway, they showed up on the top of Lookout Mountain in November, I think it was 1863, and then in December of 1863, I think that's the first about recorded instance of him setting up this thing called an Ambro saloon, or an ambrotype, a photograph. And so he would go up there, he set up a little shack, quite literally with boards, pounded it together, he had a camera, he traveled around, and that's when we start seeing these. Right here, December, I think it was, of 1863, we start seeing photographs of soldiers on the point of Lookout Mountain. As we move into 1864, you start seeing more and more. You start seeing some landscape type photos. So there's a huge waterfall on the backside of Lookout Mountain. There's some other areas that are just really beautiful. You start seeing some of those come up with his benchmark on the back. After the war ends, his younger brother, John Birney, J.B. Lynn, joins him on Lookout Mountain. I think he fought for one of the Ohio units, I can't recall. But joins him on the top of Lookout Mountain. They start taking photographs together. And so that is where the CDVs of the soldiers, that portion's over. That is only the original proprietor, R.M. Lynn. And then you start seeing some of I've got some stereo views. So stereo view, you got two pictures together and they're slightly different. And then when you put them into like a viewer, it makes them look kind of 3D. I've got a lot of those. I've only got about 50% of these out on the table. There's just not enough table space. But that's when him and his brother, his brother starts doing a lot of these. So a lot of these photos you have JB and RM Lynn are taking photos together, but unfortunately in 1872, RM falls off, they say he fell off the mountain. He got sick and died. So he got sick, passed away in 1872, and at that point, pardon me, he had a younger son. He had a younger son that then joined his brother, which would be his uncle, JB. So now you have, I believe it's GT, GT Lynn and JB Lynn are now taking photographs. And so throughout the 1870s, you see a lot of these stereo views come up, and then as it progresses into the 1880s and 90s, that's when you see more of the GT Lynn things come about. So this Ambro Saloon that was created in late 1863 kind of evolves into a house, if you will. So he had a big photograph studio right there. He lived on the point. There's some other photographers that came in. You'll see their back stamped here as well. They kind of traded spots between an area called Sunset Rock, which is on the west brow, and the main point. But ultimately, the Lynn family, or Lynn brothers, they took their photographs right there on the point, which was absolutely incredible. Great moves. So the Lynn family, they stayed there. They continued taking photographs. Some of the more recent photographs that you'll see are a lot of these. I've got almost 100, maybe a little bit more. It's kind of an addiction, I guess. But you'll see these, and they took these all the way up until 1933. So 1933 is when the Park Service, which had continued to allow them to sit there and take photographs, understand that the national park was created 1898. Yep, 1898 it was established. Anyway, 1898. So between that time and 1933, he kept taking photos there, which was great. Unfortunately, or fortunately, there was a museum plan to be built on the top of the mountain. It's called the Ox Observatory. So the Chattanooga Times, the big Chattanooga newspaper there was financed by the Ox family, OCHS. And so the National Park Service built a phenomenal museum that's still there today. It's been improved. It's great. It's got air conditioning, modern things that they have behind glass. It looks really, really good. I've had some good friends contribute to some of the pictures. I've actually got here is a photograph that can be found up on the wall, very large format inside the Ox Observatory. I actually found this in a letter. So I've tried to kind of press it. It's kind of deteriorating, but it was never mounted. But the same photograph is in the museum. So again, unfortunately, they raised the photo studio and built a beautiful Ox Observatory or museum that still is there today. So highly recommend that you check it out. I got a lot in my head, guys. Please take a look. I've got a 1924 panorama of Chattanooga. I've gone in and digitized this. They call it digital zoom. My friend Sam did it for me. And you can get on a computer or even on a smartphone, go to the website, type in Chattanooga 1924, and it's like the first thing that pops up. And you can zoom in and see people standing in the windows of these buildings. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, the amount of every single building in that photograph is listed. I've got one of Spanish American War veterans, I think 1921, that had a reunion. You've literally got war veterans from every single state, almost every single state listed, and they're all standing in front of the Chattanooga courthouse building downtown, which is still there. And I've got some more. There's the Chickamauga Dam. Hopefully everybody's kind of driven over the Chickamauga Dam once or twice maybe, but it's a very large dam up there. I've got the construction process. They're like right in the middle of a big, large scale that I thought was pretty interesting. But thank you so much for your time. I hate to run my mouth so much, and hopefully you've gotten something out of this. I highly recommend that you check out some of these photos, and I will be on hand to answer literally any question. I'll say one more thing before I get out of here. Step down. There's this one right here. It's a green one. I know you can't see what's on it, but this is the National Cemetery in Chattanooga. So there's a rock face here, and you can clearly see a door, a very large door that's there. Well, today the road has been raised about 6.5 feet to where you can only see about this much of the top of the arch of the door. Well, what this was, it was private land, and then when Union forces came in and assumed control of Chattanooga, they took a very large swath of property right in the middle of the city, and that is what is today the National Cemetery. So all of their dead from, I say all, a lot of them from, I want to say whatever the battles were at the time that were taking place there and around the city, some of the skirmishes, whenever a Union soldier would be killed, they would take them and they would put them in the cave. That is a cave system. They would store their bodies in this cave under what is currently today the National Cemetery, and that was the entrance. It was a cave entrance because it was nice and cool there. So they could store the bodies in there until they could dig a hole and put them in there. But the cave system extends what we know of about a mile at least underneath the city of Chattanooga. And I've got newspaper articles that state Temple University, which used to be in downtown Chattanooga, they were excavating underneath the road system to build a walkway from where they had their cafeteria from another building, and they hit a cave. And they found Civil War ordnance in this cave. So there's a newspaper article on that. It was really interesting. But yeah, so that's the entrance to it. But now, you can only see this much of the stone archway. There's a cave system underneath the National Cemetery. I wonder what's still in there. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.